What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry, really excited to bring you today's episode because we are talking about one of the most intriguing undrafted rookies in this year's Patriots rookie class, and that is UC Davis running back Lan Larison. Now, we've been telling you about Larison for a while now. A few weeks before the draft even came around, we were talking about Larison on this very podcast because we had our great friend from CBS Sports, Emory Hunt, who always gives us the under-the-radar prospects we hadn't yet heard much about. A couple of weeks before the draft, he gave us Lan Larison's name. And he's talking about this guy who looks like a really polished pass catcher out of the backfield, somebody who can pass protect as well, somebody who can be used as sort of a Swiss Army knife. You know, he's got some return experience, has some other special teams experience. Use him in the passing game, use him as a between-the-tackles rusher. And at the FCS level, and again, nobody better to tell us about these players than Emory Hunt because he is traveling the country to watch all of these all-star games, whether you're Division II, Division III, FCS. He's all over all of the best players from some of these lesser heralded programs. And so, no surprise, he would give us a name like Larison's. But then soon after the draft, we find out that the Patriots have worked pretty hard to make sure that Larison is one of their guys and to make sure that they bring him in, make sure that he's at rookie minicamp, and he was, and we had a chance to watch him last week. If you missed it, go back and watch our most recent Next Pats episode. We talked about our takeaways from rookie minicamp, which occurred on Friday of last week. That was their first workout. Ended up having a couple more. We gave you all our takeaways there, including how Mike Vrabel was coaching, how Will Campbell looked at left tackle, how Efton Chisholm looked, another intriguing undrafted rookie in this Patriots rookie class. But we also mentioned Larison. Guy was busy, folks. He was busy because Travion Henderson did not participate in that Friday practice. And so, plain and simple, there just weren't all that many running backs out there. And so Larison got a lot of reps. But he stood out with what looked like pretty fluid receiver skills, right? You're in shorts and T-shirts and helmets, but this is a passing camp. Let's call it what it is. Yes, offensive linemen are hitting those chest pads and driving their teammates back, and there's some good grunting and screaming and yelling going on. And these are guys, a lot of them, that are trying out. You know, this was Malcolm Butler's time to shine all the way back this time of year in 2014. Ends up making the team because of an impressive rookie minicamp, and we know what happened from there. So these guys are competitive, but there's not a lot of physicality involved right now, especially for somebody that's at one of the skill positions. So where Larison stood out was his ability to get out of the backfield, catch the football smoothly, easily, and to me, if he's able to continue to stack days, I think there is a real chance, based on this guy's production, based on his athletic talent, based on his willingness to do just about anything, that he makes this roster. Now, what we wanted to do on today's episode was bring on somebody who knows Lan Larison better than most, and that's UC Davis head coach Tim Plough. Now, Tim's got an interesting backstory with Larison because he recruited Larison to go to UC Davis. This kid who grew up on a ranch in Idaho, tried to get him even further out west, put together a good career out at UC Davis, but Plough ended up moving on soon thereafter, spent some time at Boise State, spent some time at Cal. And you're going to love a little nugget that he gives us on Craig Woodson, who the Patriots just drafted in the 4th round out of Cal, because those two spent some time together there. So keep your ear out for that. Again, entertaining little tidbit from Tim. But then Tim made his way back to UC Davis, and he's the head coach, and he's an offensively driven guy. He's the head coach at UC Davis, and he knows that he has a star in Lan Larison, ends up really building a lot of what they did at UC Davis offensively around his skill set, but also asked him to do some other things with his future in mind. So it's a great, great conversation with Tim Plough. You get some great insight into not only what kind of player Larison could be in this Josh McDaniels offense, and we get into some of the nitty-gritty details about, pass-catching, versatile running backs that have performed in this McDaniels offense in the past, but you're also going to hear a lot about what makes Larison tick and what kind of human being Mike Vrabel has on his hands. And you're going to hear, I think, a lot of qualities about Larison that made him an attractive addition for Mike Vrabel and this Patriots front office as it is currently constructed. So, without further ado, let's get into this conversation on Lan Larison, one of the most interesting men on the Patriots roster. He's a steer wrestler? What the hell is steer wrestling? And why does it matter? Let's ask Tim. Here he is. All right, very excited now to have with us head coach UC Davis, Tim Plough. Tim, thanks so much for being with us here and talking a little Lan Larison with us. This will be a lot of fun.
That's an easy topic, so I'm fired up. Thanks for having me.
The first thing I have to ask you, Tim, is Lan Larison the folk hero he appears to be? Because as soon as news broke that he was signed by the New England Patriots, I think it was maybe 30 seconds later that we found out he was a champion steer wrestler. You don't have to do that much research on Lan to find out that he helped save the lives of one of his buddies who was drowning in a pool back in high school. I mean, it's like he reads like a folk hero. We obviously don't know him yet. Hopefully we'll get to know him very soon here. But is he a folk hero? Is he considered a folk hero at UC Davis?
Well, he's obviously a tremendous young man, that has impacted the Davis community and the Davis program in a pretty unique way. But he's just a special dude. Guy works extremely hard to be great at his craft, but he's also a good person and kind, and has been able to do some amazing things. You talk about the fact that he was the number one steer wrestler in the United States at his age. He's also a great baseball player. Came here as a running back, but he played quarterback in high school. Led our team in tackles on the punt team this year as a senior. He had 2,400 yards, 1,600 rushing, and 800 receiving. He was an All-American kick returner. I mean, he's a pretty special guy. So I think I know the Patriots got a good one. I think it couldn't be a better fit. That's the thing I was most happy about is when you have a guy going that late, you're not quite sure where it's going to stack up. And but I thought he landed at the perfect fit for him because, the Patriots have proven over years that they know how to use guys and put them in roles where they can be successful. And I think that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. I mean, in terms of your reaction to seeing he's going to the Patriots, and not only the Patriots, but the Patriots with Josh McDaniels, right? Anybody who's in football, understands what Josh McDaniels has done in this league, and especially with Tom Brady. But just in terms of his resume, what do you think makes Lan such a good fit for New England and McDaniels specifically?
Well, I'm a football junkie, an offensive guy at heart. So, I've been studying Josh McDaniels films for over a decade and stealing a lot of their concepts, and have a high amount of respect, obviously, for Coach Vrabel. I think he's one of the best football coaches and coaches, period, in the country. So, but that program itself, what they've shown over time is in that offense, how they can put guys in roles and help them be successful. And I think if the Patriot fans are trying to look at, who is Lan Larison? What would he be? If you think about the running backs that have been successful there in the past, the Kevin Falks, the James Whites, the Rex Burkheads, the Danny Woodheads, all these guys maybe didn't have the huge numbers in college or, all the measurables. All of them were guys that could do multiple things on a football field. So Lan's a great receiver. He's a great pass protector. He can run physically and get short yardage runs. He has the speed to get around the edge. So he'll provide a lot of options for a smart offensive designer to say, hey, we can use this guy in the receiver. We can use him in the backfield. We can do a lot of different things with him. And that's what I think New England's done as well as anybody for a long time. So I'm really excited for him. I think the fit couldn't have been better. Everybody wants to get drafted. And I think the hope was he would get drafted in the 6th or 7th round. But I kept telling him, I think it's better to not get drafted because you get to really pick where you want to go. And I think the Patriots were really aggressive with him leading up to the draft. And they were really aggressive on the day of the draft, even before the draft was over, talking about how much they want him there. And I think that meant a lot to Lan. He just wants a chance. So I do think it's a great fit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the names you mentioned there, Rex Burkhead, to me, that was one of the first names that came to mind for me, just because Lan does look like he's a little bigger dude. I think he's about 5'11" and almost 210 pounds, 215 pounds, thereabouts. And that was pretty similar to Rex. And we know Rex, he did everything here. They had, James White was really more of a passing game specific player. And they had guys like LeGarrette Blount who are really just, early down specific running backs.
Right.
Rex kind of bridged the gap, and he could fill in and do everything. And it feels like maybe, Lan is going to be similar. Is that how you guys tried to use him? I've seen a few of Lan's clips where you will flex him out and go empty, and he's, aligned in the slot and running real routes. Like, how nice was it to have a guy who's as versatile as Lan seemed to be for your offense?
Yeah, I think, as an offensive coordinator, you always kind of, I think a good offense is going to find its players and design the offense around the players. And that was really the first time where I had an elite tailback at that level. And so it was kind of the easiest situation. If your best player is the tailback, you can get him the ball pretty easily. You just turn around and hand it to him one way, but then you can throw it to him out of the backfield. You can motion him into the receiver. But I think what makes Lan really special for the Patriot organization, and I know that Coach Vrabel and his staff know this, is Lan's humility. Lan knows he's an undrafted free agent. He's not going in there thinking he's going to be the starting tailback. He knows to make the team, he's going to have to be a special teams guy. And there's no doubt in my mind that Lan is an elite special teams player. Like I said, he led our team in tackles on the punt team. That's our, the best player in the country at FCS, and he wants to be on the punt team and leads the team in tackles. He was an All-American kick returner as a freshman. So he could be on the kickoff return, punt team. He could start on all 4 special teams units right now and be elite at it. And I think him providing depth at running back, like you said, if he ends up being the Burkhead type that is your third tailback that can go in there and help you get out of a game or help you in certain scenarios, he'll be great. But I think he'll thrive on special teams. I think he's a great teammate. But that environment, I think, led by Vrabel is perfect for him. So I think that part, I'm sure the Patriots were aware of that. But I think he'll thrive initially on special teams, and then he'll start to carve his way out offensively. But for us, yeah, he did everything. You don't see a lot of tailbacks catch 75 passes in college. He was pretty remarkable and never got tired. He touched the ball 35 times a game for us and never came out of a game. So I think he's a unique person. He understands the situation he's in. So I expect him to thrive and do really well.
Man, you use the word humility. A couple others come to mind just hearing that he led the team in tackles, special teams tackles on that punt coverage unit when he is, the star player on the team, sacrifice, putting the team first. Like, these are all things that we know Mike Vrabel is
right.
going to absolutely love. Did he have to come to you to say, hey, coach, I want to be on the punt coverage sheet. I can do this. Or did you just know, hey, this guy's such a good athlete. He's got the stamina to do it. Let's see how it works. Like, how, because that just sounds really rare to me. Somebody who touches the ball as frequently as he does, being on one of those, core units.
Well, I think, coaching at the FCS level for a long time, you realize, like, every year we're going to have, a couple guys that can play pro football. They're not going to get the same notoriety maybe as the other players unless they can get to a Senior Bowl or something like that. And so I always explain to them, like, hey, most of you guys are going to get drafted late, possibly be free agents. You're going to need to be developed on special teams to make it in the NFL. And so we basically came to Lan and said, Lan, we'll try to take care of you, but we need to get film of you on these units so that when the NFL teams come by, they can see how talented you are at these things, because we saw them in practice do it. And so our thought was, hey, we'll let you have a couple reps every game on punt and kickoff and whatever, just so they have film of it. Problem was we had a great season, so we'd be up by 30, 40 points. It'd be the fourth quarter, and I'd look out there, we'd be punting, and Lan would be out there on the punt team. And we'd be, what are you doing? And he'd be like, what do you mean? We're punting. I'm like, yeah, but you're out of the game. Well, this is an important play. That's just kind of the guy he is. So I think, knowing the type of program and franchise that the Patriots have and the type of coaching that, Vrabel leads there, I can see why they were so aggressive, because it does make a lot of sense.
And you mentioned he was All-American as a kick returner earlier in his career. I went back and tried to check. It looks like maybe he didn't do it, or didn't do much of it, at least the last couple of years. But you watch some of his tape, and it's clear, like, this guy can break tackles. I'm watching him against, some of the better competition that you guys face. Watch him against Cal, breaking tackles. And even if there's not a ton of space, somebody gets through, he's shaking a guy off and trying to pick up whatever he can get. Just the ability to be put in that situation. Obviously, he's a running back. He's a tough dude. We know that. He's playing special teams in general. But as a kick returner, Tim, do you think that's an area where he might be able to thrive at the next level? Because I know, these new kick return rules in the NFL, I just haven't spoken to special teams coordinators. I think they're thinking about using more running back types, guys that are just a little bit bigger, because it is a little bit more like a running play, just given the nature of the rules and how many kicks they think will be returned. Do you think he'll be able to do that as a pro?
I do think that could be something he thrives in, mainly because, like you said, the way that the kick return is now in the NFL, there's so much space. And that's really where Lan thrives right now as a runner. He thrives in space. I think one of the areas that he's still growing, because he played quarterback his whole life, is, if you try to run inside zone or a power scheme with him in the interior of the line, he hasn't had years and years of reps of letting things develop and seeing how that plays out. I think he's going to keep growing and getting better at that. What he does naturally is, if you just throw him on a field of grass and let him run around and just be more athletic and more physical than people, then that's where he's at his best. And that's kind of what the kickoff return is right now. And he's got such great ball skills. And I think he's fast enough to run away from people that I do think that could be something he does a good job with at that level for sure. And he's got that fearless attitude, right? Like, you got to be fearless on kick return, because you're running into smoke and who knows what's going to happen. This guy's been wrestling steers his whole life. I don't think he's going to be scared to run into a kickoff, So I think he's got a lot of good elements for that.
Is that how the steer wrestling background comes into play the most? Do you think it's just mentality, or is there anything physically? I don't know a whole lot about it. We don't do a whole lot of steer wrestling here in New England, Tim. So, I don't know if there's anything physically that might translate, athletically that might translate, but maybe it's just the mental piece to it.
Yeah, I think it's just the toughness, right? This guy grew up on a ranch in Idaho. He's lived on a horse basically his whole life. So just his mentality of what is really hard, to him, waking up and working out or conditioning or running 10 plays in a row or, getting hit hard in a football game, like, to him, that's not really hard. So he has a different definition of what hard work is and what pain is. And I think you learn that in that type of stuff in the rodeo, world of what pain really is, what is hurt, what is injured. So I think his mentality is just different with those kind of things. And so there's not a lot of fear for him. Football is fun. He always jokes around like, whenever I'm done with football, I'm just going to, join the PBR and steer, wrestle steers again. So I think in his mind, like, this is just, I'm going to do this as long as I can and have fun with it. And just be a part of a team. I don't think he really views it as anything more than that.
That's a really cool mindset. I can't wait to get the chance to talk to him. Might be as early as this week, rookie minicamp this week. We're going to be out at practice tomorrow. I had a couple things that I wanted to ask you, Tim, before we let you go here. But you have, been around some guys that are either having NFL success right now or look like they're about to have a lot of success in the NFL right now. I'm thinking of, Khalil Shakir, Ashton Genty, you were at Boise State for a bit, and then at Cal, you spent some time at Cal, and they just had a handful of guys drafted, including one here, and Craig Woodson, a safety that they drafted in the 4th round. So you've been around NFL players. Is there a moment that you had as a coach of Lan, understanding how talented he was before you became head coach this past year, but this past year where you looked at it and said, okay, yeah, this guy's an NFL type of talent? Is there one thing that sticks out in your mind in terms of on the field stuff in the time you spent with Lan?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say, just to jump on, Craig Woodson is a steal. And just remember I said that guy's going to play for a long time in the NFL, and he is, again, a perfect Patriot. Patrick Chung all over again. Like, that guy is a baller. So Pat's had a great draft if they're getting guys like Craig Woodson. But I think for what I saw Lan, again, I recruited him and then I left and went to Boise and Cal, and I came back and he was a senior, and we played Cal the first game last year. We had a 3rd and 2 first drive. We didn't block a soul. And he ran right through that defense like they weren't even there. I mean, ran through 3, 4, 5 tackles, had a 15, 20-yard run. And he was giving those guys the business for the entire game. They had a running back on their team that everybody was hyping up. And I mean, after the game, the head coach for Cal, who's like a brother to me, he was like, that's the best player we've seen in a long time. So I just think you put him in any avenue and he was going to be great. The one-handed catches that you'll see, or him leaping over people in games, that's all good and stuff. But I think it was in the toughest competition and the biggest moments, that guy always seemed to raise his level of play. And when we were on the field with the Cals and teams like that, he not only was he hanging with them, but he looked like he was better than all of them. And I thought that's what stood out when I watched him.
How about away from the game field, Tim? If a young player, young running back comes up to you and asks you about Lan Larison and wants to know about his mentality or his competitiveness or his work ethic, whether it's weight room, like, again, practice fields, anywhere else, is there a moment that you'll always remember as his head coach this past season that really will stick with you?
Yeah, I mean, Lan, when the season was done and we had our banquets, and obviously he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame here someday and all that, but I wanted everyone in the community, to understand that, this guy a year ago this time, so basically last April, he got offered $400,000, $500,000 to go to schools like Missouri and Vanderbilt and Texas A&M. I mean, huge programs that are offering him life-changing money. And, we all expected him to go because we've had a couple guys in that same scenario, and it doesn't bother us at all. Like, that makes sense. And, he came in and said, Coach, I don't want to leave. Like, I'm the captain. This is my team. I want to win a championship here. I feel confident that you guys are going to get me the ball and utilize me better than other places. And I want to stay, but everyone says I'm crazy to stay. Like, if I stay, are all these NFL teams going to think I'm scared, or are they going to think that I can't play, or like, is it going to hurt me if I stay? And I just told him, NFL scouts, NFL guys are smart. They can see talent. If you want to be here, you should stay. And for him to stay and then have that season and then to land at a place like the Patriots was just a really cool moment for him and I, because I could see how much it meant to him that he felt like he made the right decision for him. Not that other guys have made the wrong decision, but for him, he wanted to stay because that's how he was raised, is just to be loyal and, be a family guy. And this is his family and he wants to be here till the end. And for him to do that and still, achieve his dream of being in the NFL and playing for a team like the Patriots is pretty storybook. So I'll always remember sitting in my office. I'm in my office right now. I was sitting with him a year ago, right in that chair, and him talking about how he didn't want to leave and hoping that it wasn't going to affect people thinking that he's scared or anything. And for him to get there still is pretty cool, and to do it the way he wanted to. So I think that's what I always remember about Lan is he's obviously talented, but it's his humility and loyalty that I'll always remember.
That's awesome. And great insight into his personality. And you guys did end up having a great year last year, 11-3, make a run in the postseason. So it sounds like he was able to, in large part because of the guy he is, have his cake and eat it too. Like he got to, stick, show that loyalty, have a great season. And as you said, now he's in the NFL and he's in a great spot. It sounds like for him and his skill set and somebody with his mindset.
Yeah, I think the tough thing now is, like I've tell all our guys that go into the NFL or CFL or any of these things, is it's hard, man. This is a business now. These guys are grown men, and everyone's competing for jobs, and you only got a roster of 50 guys, and everyone's talented, and so I'm rooting for Lan. I would be shocked if he doesn't make the team. And if he doesn't make that team, I'd be shocked if he's not in the NFL for a long time because of his mindset. But I'm just proud that he's getting the opportunity to be there, because I know how hard that is. And for him to make it that far is pretty amazing from what he's coming from. And so I know I'm rooting for him. A lot of people here are rooting for him in Idaho and California and hoping he does a great job. But I think the coolest part for me is I think he's in a great franchise led by a really great person in Coach Vrabel. And that's all he wants. He just wants to be around good people that care as much as he does. And so because of that, I think he'll thrive. But I know it's going to be hard work and there'll be a lot of competition. But for all the people out there, if you're looking for someone to root for, man, you're going to fall in love with him pretty quick. So we're rooting for him. I hope he does well out there and shows you guys what he's capable of. And I would love to see him help the Patriots get back to the top.
We're looking forward to seeing him at rookie minicamp and hopefully for, months moving forward here and maybe even into the fall as a member of the 53-man roster. Tim Plough, head coach, UC Davis. Tim, thanks so much for coming on here and teaching us so much about Lan Larison. I know he already has fans here in New England, Tim. Again, he seems like a folk hero, and you watch his tape, and it is electric. It's so much fun to watch. But I think after hearing this conversation and hearing from you, I think people that maybe were waiting to get on the Lan Larison bandwagon will not be waiting a whole lot longer. So thanks so much for being on with us. This was a lot of fun.
No, man, this is an honor to be on this, and I appreciate you guys, saying so many nice things about Lan and shedding some light on our program. So anytime, appreciate it.
Great stuff there from Tim Plough. Really appreciate him joining us here on Next Pats and teaching us a little bit more about Lan Larison. You hear us talking about the steer wrestling, and you can find the clips. You can find them online. I mean, ESPN did a great job. This is from a game between UC Davis and Montana. I believe this is the FCF playoffs. And FCS, playoffs. And they've got great clips of Lan Larison jumping off a moving stallion. I know nothing about anything when it comes to this stuff. So he's jumping off a horse who's out of the gates at full speed, and I'm gonna give you just a very quick little breakdown here as far as my opinion of it goes. Basically, it's a side saddle on the horse, jump off, land on the steer, wrestle it to the ground, grab it by the horns, and wrestle the thing to the ground. So, pretty entertaining personality. You could go online and find clips of steer wrestling in bad conditions, and Lan Larison's out there with the guy that he's competing against, and they're belly flopping into mud puddles. I mean, he sounds like a real character. But obviously, from everything that Tim Plough was able to tell us there, sounds like the kind of guy that you would want as a teammate too. The ability, the willingness to sacrifice and play as much special teams as he did. When again, he is not only the star player for UC Davis, he's one of the best players in school history. He is the school record holder for single season all-purpose yards. He had 2,387 all-purpose yards. Last year, he also has the career all-purpose yards record, 6,504. Over the course of his career there at UC Davis, 2024 Walter Payton Award finalist. He's an AP FCS All-American. He's first team Big Sky All-Conference. The list goes on in terms of the number of things that he was able to accomplish as a collegian. And, to me, one of the coolest stories to hear about is he's got big-time programs coming after him. We're talking SEC programs offering him real money. And he says, no, I think I'll stick it out here and I'll finish up here. And doesn't end up getting drafted, but ends up going to a place where it seems like he's an excellent match for what Josh McDaniels wants to do. We talked about Rex Burkhead, and some of the dimensions are pretty similar, and some of, in my opinion, the versatility is going to be similar with Larison as well. If he can contribute on special teams the way Burkhead did, and people probably don't remember that part of Burkhead's role in New England, but he had to play a lot of special teams, and he understood it, and he thrived in those situations, quite frankly. And if you're a third or fourth running back in the NFL, that's life. Like, you've got to be able to do those kinds of things. And I know the Patriots are looking at running backs, whether it's Larison, Travian Henderson is in this conversation for sure, about kick returns and how there are probably going to be more kick returns now because teams don't want to just kick it out of the back of the end zone and give the offense the ball at the 35. They're going to force you to bring it out. And with the new rules and the way the kick coverage teams are set up prior to the ball being kicked, there's not as much space. And so it's a more condensed kind of play. You're going to put value on things like, the ability to break tackles. And so, the Dante Halls of the world, that's always the guy that I remember growing up watching. He was just such an incredible returner, and he was, I think of him more as a punt returner than anything else, but he was obviously an undersized guy, that's putting it lightly, but incredibly shifty and could make it work. That's probably not necessarily the skill set you're going to be looking for. You're going to be looking for guys that are a little bigger than that, closer to the 200-pound, 210, 215-pound range, because these are almost looking more and more like running plays when you're actually returning kicks. So great stuff from Tim Plough. Really cool story in Lan Larison. You can check out, you heard me mention it off the top, helped save his friend. His friend was apparently clinically dead for 10 minutes. These guys were teenagers. His friend's name is Wyatt Schmidt. They're in the pool together, horsing around. They were racing, I think, underwater for an extended period of time. And it sounds as though Wyatt Schmidt's heart essentially, stopped, gave out on him. Lan Larison pulls him out of the pool. People perform CPR, and he and his buddy are playing baseball together not long thereafter. So really cool story. Really, it sounds like big personality. So looking forward to getting to meet Lan Larison here in the near future. But just wanted to share with you an episode on him, focused on him specifically, because I think there's a lot of interest in him already out there in New England. Really quickly, one last note, just as a follow-up sort of to our rookie minicamp takeaways. Just asking around a little bit, asking who impressed over the course of time that we weren't, as the media, weren't necessarily able to be in there and watching the way we did on Friday. For example, Travian Henderson, it looks like, was back on the field the next day on Saturday, helmet in hand. He was not doing those things on Friday, so whatever kept him out of Friday's practice, not all that severe, or so it seems. A cool shot of Will Campbell breaking down his fellow rookies after one of the practices. So those leadership traits that we've been talking about for a long time now that the Patriots have really liked in Campbell over the time that they have scouted him, those showing themselves early. And when I asked about who was impressing and who impressed and who had, a good few practices, Campbell's name is one that came to me from multiple different directions. And that's no surprise, both in terms of his movement skills, but in his leadership and some of the intangible stuff that would come out in these types of settings where, again, there's just not a lot of contact right now. But, his technical savvy as well, I think, stands out. He's not a 10-year pro by any stretch, but he's a guy who's played a lot of football at a really high level and gotten some good coaching. So I think they feel pretty good about what they've seen from Will Campbell to this point. But the other name that sort of piqued my interest was a name you just heard in our conversation with Tim Plough, and that was Craig Woodson. And, I asked why. And, some of it is football IQ. It's a guy who played all over the field at Cal. He's an older prospect as well. He's 24 years old. And so, you look at somebody like that and you say, okay, you should be relatively polished by the time you get to the league. You've seen a lot of football. You've played a lot of football. And so that was one thing that stood out. But I know it was also just his movement skills. And that is something for players, especially in the secondary, at the receiver spot, maybe even like Lan Larison at the running back spot. In these shorts and T-shirts sorts of sessions, movement skills can stand out. It does give those guys an opportunity to shine in some ways. And so for Craig Woodson, just looking at his scouting profile here, 6 feet, 200 pounds, 30.5-inch arms, 31-inch arms. Not a blinding 40, but a good solid 40 for somebody with that frame, 4.45. That's a good time. 1.56, 10-yard split, 36-inch vertical. Like, these are all pretty good numbers. And it was his movement skills that I was told stood out to people at Patriots rookie minicamp. So just a name to keep in mind, somebody who I think, and hand up, I was one of them, didn't get a ton of exciting response, I think, at the time he was drafted with their first pick on day 3. I think as we were doing our grades in real time, he got the lowest of the first 5 picks that came off the board. So, rounds 1 through 4, he was our lowest graded guy, and it doesn't mean anything, quite frankly. But it doesn't even mean that, I think he's a bad player. I think I felt at the time that there might have been some other players on the board who might have made a little bit more sense. But hey, if he's already standing out in some ways and he comes in and he competes, and you're talking about a team that has used a lot of 3 safety packages in the past. If they want to continue to do that with Mike Vrabel and have Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar and Craig Woodson all out there simultaneously, that could end up looking like a great pick. So, we'll see as time moves on. But just something to keep in mind there. That was interesting to me. That was one of the names of Patriots rookies that stood out the most to the people who were running the practice, right? So just one name to kind of put in our back pockets and see if we can notice anything else from Craig Woodson as we get into our OTAs, open OTAs that will be open to the media a little bit later this offseason, then obviously into training camp. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Before we go, I do want to mention to you, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. Wednesday is schedule release day for the NFL. Everybody's schedules, all 32, coming out at 8 o'clock at night. We know this is when teams like to drop their clever little social media videos that are detailing in very granular detail all of their games and when they're playing against their particular matchups. We're going to be online on YouTube Live. You can actually find the link in the show notes right here on YouTube right now. So save that puppy, put it away, maybe just go to it right now and just keep it up in a window and keep refreshing that thing until 8 o'clock on Wednesday night. Myself, Tommy Kern, will be there live at 8 o'clock. We'll be reacting to the schedule as you are and going back and forth. And we're going to be answering questions in the chat and just going through and identifying the most difficult, the easiest stretches of the 2025 schedule for the New England Patriots. We'll also obviously get an idea of any primetime games. Anything outside of the one Thursday nighter, which I believe is all they had last year. And you understand it, right? Given where the team was, but new head coach, promising quarterback going into his second season, really remade roster in one off season. And so any chance, maybe from a national point of view, this is a more interesting team. I think it will be. So we'll be reacting to all of that stuff and much, much more. 8 o'clock. Right here on YouTube Live. We'll be streaming it. Celtics will be playing simultaneously. So this is your classic, friends, second screen experience. So bring us up on your laptop, on your phone, whatever. You've got the Celtics probably on the big screen. That's fine. You want to go Celtics on the small screen? You want to put us on the big screen? We'll accept that. We're ready for the bright lights. We've been training all off season for this. So be with us Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. Link in the show notes. Hit it now. We'll talk to you then.